Okay. Okay. So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this second day of the WP 2021. This morning we will come back to Mekong Delta with two speakers from CTU, Canto University, and we will start with Mr. Nguyen Hieu Trung, who will have a session on the water resources in the Mekong Delta. Please, we are a little late now, so please, Mr. Chung, without any more word, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephen, for introduction. Thank you. I would like to share my screen so that we can start my presentation. Okay. Thank you. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I would arrange a little bit so that we don't miss some part of the screen. Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm asked to present to you the water resources in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, where recently you may hear that there are a lot of challenges on the chains of water resources because of both global climate change and also the water management along the Mekong River go through different countries in the region. So my presentation will be 4 parts. First, to introduce about the Vietnamese Mekong Delta for those who maybe have less information about the geographical condition, natural condition of the Mekong Delta, and then discuss more detail about the natural water resources of the delta, and then discuss a little bit about the water-related issues. The last part is some summary and some discussion. So that is the 4 part that I want to present to you. So first of all, in terms of the location, I think most of you know where the Mekong Delta is. We are at the end of the Mekong River, and that's also the end of the Vietnam's. This is a very long country, and here the area is around 4 million hectares. With more than 17 million inhabitants. We have 12 provinces and 1 city. The main city is Can Tho City. So the area is very flat. So you can see in this picture, it's formed by the sediment of the Mekong River. And the terrain is very low. You can see only the high area only along the river and some mountains, and the rest are very low, around 1 to 2 meters above mean sea level. And go further to the sea, you can see that there are some sand dunes along the coast and some very refreshed, very low area. In the tip of the delta, we call the Camau Peninsula, and we have floodplains most everywhere in the Mekong Delta. So if you look at this condition of landscape, you may see that the water, the interaction of both river water and sea water influence a lot in the Mekong Delta. So further, we will say more. And sorry, the delta is developed very rapid in terms of changing land use. I have to move this bar. I don't know where to move. Okay, it's not so. Yeah. Anyway, so you see these two maps showing the very fast change of land use. Only like 10 years, 5 years, and now it's even different in terms of changing from 1-2 rice crop per year to triple rice crop per year, more intensive view of land for more intensive agriculture. The dark color here are triple rice, and you see here in 2006 is mainly double rice per year. So and also they have a lot of change in along the coast from agriculture to aquaculture. So that this blue color. So there's a lot of dynamic in terms of land use, and this is very much related to the water use in the delta, and also the way we adapt to the changes of water. So at the moment, the delta produce more than 50% of the national rice and food. Especially also 65% of the total aquaculture. So and also 70% of fruits. And then this is also the major area for food exports. So this help you to understanding that the high demands of water, especially of fresh water in the delta. So back to the water condition. I don't know why it's so slow. So that's it, the basic, very brief introduction about the delta. So about water resources in the delta, you know that we are in the tropical monsoon region. So in terms of rainwater resources, we have two seasons, the dry season and the wet season, that we call the rainy season here. And that's the one period is very dry of 6 months, and when periods of 6 months very wet. That's from May to October. So that means the distribution of the rainfall is sometimes too little water from rain, and sometimes too much is causing very difficulties in water management. So you see that the rainfall in the rainy season is very high. Especially you see that at the Kamau Peninsula, it's around 2,200 millimeter per year, and the less rain area in near to the north, near to Cambodia, it's drier, but it's still very high, 1,400 millimeters. So the distribution in time is you see that during the dry season is almost no rain. In this graph, you see that the the top one is the rainfall, and the below is the evaporation. So that means it's no rain, but the high evaporation make reduce significantly the water available. But in the rainy season, you have very high rainfall. That leads to the problem of water, especially in this area where it's far away from the main river. The Mekong River is the main freshwater resources to supply for all delta. But this area is far from the river. And even though we built a lot of canals to connect the main river to the area, but because of the very flat terrain, so the water cannot move very fast. So then during the dry season, the freshwater supply from the main river cannot reach this tip of the delta. So later we will tell about the river water resources. So that first about the rainwater resource, we have a kind of very not so good distribution of the rainwater. In terms of river water resources, we are on know about that the Mekong River is very important source of fresh water to the delta. It go through China, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia, and we get the rest of water here in the delta. And this is the terrain. It's from very high elevation to here. You see, is almost 0 to 2 meters above mean sea level. So that if there are too much water from during a rainy season, so the flow will go down, and then we get flooding during the rainy season. But in the dry season, no rain, and the water are used along the river, and that means we have less fresh water from the river. And during the wet season, you see that more than half of the delta is flooded. If there was no control, you know. Now the situation is different because of we built a lot of dike system to control the flood. But if we put it a natural condition, it would be more than half of the delta is flooded. And you see the number there. We have a deep inundation area almost at the northern part of the delta, and then the average inundation area and the shallow inundation area. In the dry season, I explained before that we have less water from river, and we have in the high tide, then the shallow water can go very deep inside the river and distribute to different canals. We have very large river mouths along the coastal of the delta, so it's easily get fresh water, and also saline water go very deep into the delta. And because of very large river mouth, we cannot build any construction to stop that saline, intrusion. Even though it's possible to do that, then during the flood season, we have the problem of drain that's a big amount of water from the river. So this is a kind of manage between the dry and the wet season. It's not only to control the flood, but also to consider the saline control and vice versa. When you control the sunlight, you have to take care of the problem of flooding, drainage, draining the flood. Yep. In terms of groundwater resources, the delta was formed from 6 to 10,000 years before, and then it's during the summers and dry and wet and dry and wet. So many times it's repeating. It's formed the delta like what we have now. You can find many literature to explain the extending of the delta. The area is mainly gravel, sand, clay, and then we have only some very small area with mountain here near to Cambodia, and along the coast, very small area. Then we are on very just sand and clay, silk soil. So that leads to we have a very good aquifer for groundwater storage. So it forms several layers of aquifer that where we can attract groundwater. You can see the cross section there. So along the coast, you see there are only some aquifers where we cannot store the groundwater, but the yellow area where fresh water can be stored. Yeah. Here we have very deep bedrock down here, but up there we have silk, clay, and gravel. Here you see some mountain. This pink rock. See. So that means we can store. We have a lot of groundwater. However, because of the sedimentation, with different chemicals component, and so we have our soil. You see a lot of area in alluvial acid sulfide soil, and then along the coast we have saline soils because of the seawater, the brown colors acid sulfide soil. That's somehow a great problem for the groundwater, because when we extract the groundwater, we will see that there are a lot of acid sulfide. The pH is low, so we cannot use it. And the saline is also very it cannot use for irrigation or for drinking. So that lead to different area where we can attract the groundwater. We should take the groundwater in very deep area, deep layer, like more than some area here we can have it less than 100 meter. At the moment, people it depends on the area, but the average is about like 20-30 meters. But then some area in we have to go further deep, and there are some area we cannot get the fresh water, fresh groundwater, because of saline included here and here, for example. Yeah. So that means we have a lot of groundwater, but the water that we can use for drinking or for irrigation is not that much, and then we have to protect this groundwater for the further use, because to get the groundwater is we need to, the water need to go through long distance and take like 1,000 years to reach the Mekong Delta. So this is we need to protect this water for the future use, when we have very serious surface water problem. Yeah, so those are the natural water resources in the delta. We have four sort of water. You get the water from the sky, from what we call the heaven, and then water from river, water from ground, and then from groundwater, and then seawater. Seawater before, people think that's a kind of disaster when saline intrusion. But now seawater is also we consider is resources, water resources that we can exploit for for example practice of saline aquaculture, for example. So that's the new way of thinking of seeing saline water. Uh, Before we try to prevent the saline water, but now we think of using saline water. Yeah. So then we discuss about water issues in the Mekong Delta. Um, the first one is the trans-boundary water issues, especially in the water resource from the river, uh, because of the you see that along in the Mekong Basin, this map shows you there are many hydropower dams where we have a reservoir and the water is stopped along the way. Go through the river to the delta. We have a lot of discussion now the impacts of the dams to the flow of the river, especially for water flow and the sediment transport, and also fish, migration and so on. There are some very significant obvious chain that some researcher observe and see the chain, for example, here from extinction. They compare the water level from one station upstream and one from downstream. And then you see before one hydropower dam operation, the flow is not so different. But then after the operation of the hydropower dam, you see the significant reduction of the flow downstream. Yeah, and even near now, you can see that it's dropped very much. And then if you have many hydropower dam during the dry season, they stop the flow and then release very little, and then at the delta we already experienced that. I think from Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia and Vietnam on, we experienced that kind of reduce of the flow. And also not only water flow, but also the pollution and the sedimentation and the aquaculture, the fish resources chain. In the delta, we have to adapt to such kind of change, and not only in terms of the flow from the river, but also from the chain of the seawater, level is higher, and then also the uncertainty about the water flow from the river, because sometimes the flood come early, sometimes the flood come very late, and then if we cultivate our crop as the normal crop calendar, uh, we cannot get a good yield. So we need to build some control, some hydraulics construction that to control the water to reduce the uncertainty. So during the 1996, in the Mekong Delta, we built a lot of dike to protect the flood. Then it's extending a lot, and this is somehow protect the crop inside, but impact to the surrounding area, and not only from upstream but also downstream of the delta. But because of the intensified of agriculture, we built more and more dike. Yeah, and to control, we have the sluice gate. Early flood season we close, but then during the high flood we open to get the flood water inside the rice field to get sediment. That's the optimized operation. However, some provinces they don't do that. They close on time. So that's also the problem of operation of the system. Along the coast to control the sunlight intrusion, we also build similar system with dike and sluice gates, so that we can stop the sunlight water inside go into the canal and harm to the agriculture. But after some periods of high flood, and also we see that the construction is not enough, and also the area where we cultivate triple rice, the yield is not so good, and so the cost for implementing for fertilizer, for pesticide increasing. So then we need to change our operation of the system by have some time or get flood water inside. Uh, and also the cost sometimes because of the problem when we close the sluices during the dry season, we can prevent the sunlight water go into the area. However, because we have no very little water, fresh water from the river to supply to this area, the area become very dry. And then because of the acid sulfate soil I mentioned before, is without water, the acid sulfate soil become very toxic, and also we cannot do any kind of crops or fish aquaculture here. So then we need to change this to from rice to shrimp to practice waters. So that means we operate a system to get saline water, first to reduce the acidity, second to transform from rice to aquaculture. So there are some kind of adaptation here to manage the water, to adapt to the change of the natural condition, and also because of the system cannot not suitable for the new condition of sea level rise. For example, in 2016, we have a very dry year where we have very little water from upstream and high tide. So many the area along the coast we have a big problem of saline intrusion. So then we need to select between more higher dike. We have to accept the fact that we have to get saline water into the area and change it into new type of production. So there are a lot of new innovation here to find a measure to adapt to the changes. And at the same time, we have some research and find out that the delta is now sinking. Because of the groundwater extraction for irrigation. and for water supply in the rural area. So later I will show you the problem. But this also bring uh, uh, more problem of saline intrusion and flooding in the area. So the question is what we should do next. You know, even though we change from uh, mostly from rice and now more diverse land use, and changing from small farm to larger farm, and apply more advanced technology to in agriculture to increase the value of the products, so that we can reduce the area, reduce the crop, but we still get the 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 value, higher value, so that we can cover the loss of the reduce of the area and the crop. So also in 2019, 18, we the government issued a new resolution of 120, where in this resolution is very important because it's the strategy is to instead of using construction to protect, the delta from the flood or for the saline intrusion, the strategy is go toward more natural based production system, that in that we take advantages from the all of the water resources, including saline water. And also we use the very special local production to increase the value, very unique and special production. And then expect more tourists to get and also have a kind of post-harvest technology to increase the value of the product. So that also important. And then also the government want to have more retention of reservoir in the delta, so that we can get prepared for some periods of salted water in the very dry year. So that is also the strategy for the future. So in terms of I mentioned before in this picture, we built a lot of construction, and we find a lot of negative, environmental impacts in the delta. That's also one reason why we change. We have the new resolution 120, where in which we will change the operation of the sluice gate system and canal operation toward more control and less prevent, but then just get water and just retain the water and use a different sort of water in more optimal way. So to reduce the environmental impact, And the problem also when we do the construction like that is more like what we call the plan adaptation from the government. Sometimes it's conflict with the local adaptation. The farmer, for example, in this area, they are they have very good practice in aquaculture, practice saltwater aquaculture. But then when the government built the sluice gate to reduce, to control the saline water, then they cannot, change from, they cannot continue their saline aquaculture like shrimp, for example. So that is some time of some problem of conflict in kind of adaptation measure between the local community and the higher level of district or province plan adaptation. The flood control or saline control also enter the flow inside the delta, which is also not so good, especially lead to the river bank erosion everywhere, because when you close area, the water, instead of going to this area, it have to go somewhere else. And if everywhere you put the dike, and then the water will concentrate in the canals, and then the flow will increase, and then it will destroy the river bank or canal bank. And also the area for fish to come during the flood season to migrate, and the reproduction is changed, and the all of ecosystem is the balance is not there, and then we reduce the fish sources. And when we did the flood control upstream provinces, and then the flood go downstream. So this kind of construction is not very good water management. Now we consider, we realize that. And you see a lot of conflicting between, using up the water resources for forest, for aquaculture, for agriculture. Aquaculture here mean using salt water. Agriculture here mean using salt water. And in the same area, you may see both aquaculture, agriculture, and forest, mangrove forest. And extending of aquaculture, and also the extension of agriculture due to the dike system is conflicting, and also reduce of the forest. So especially in this area, there are different, land use system sharing different kind of water resources. So it's also very, very challenging for the local government and also local people to adapt to changes in terms of water resource here. Also, other problem is that the water pollution, because of intensive agriculture, aquaculture, and also industrialized area, industry area, and then extension of the urban. So we have deal with a big problem of waste management, and then also water, wastewater treatment, and you see the canals is polluted. So this leads to some area, instead of using surface fresh water to supply for drinking water, then we have to pump the groundwater, pump groundwater for water supply. In some area, they even pump groundwater for irrigation. So it leads to a new situation of the groundwater resources in the delta. So if you look at the Camau area in only, in 10 years, and now it's even lower. You see the water level in the aquifer is reduced significantly. And this may lead to, the problem of saline water, groundwater intrusion, because that flow from the sea, and then this area groundwater maybe not fresh groundwater anymore, and it will be also saline, so that we cannot use anymore. And also, if we cannot control the pump like this, and then it can leach the pollution water from surface down to the groundwater, and then the aquifer will be also polluted. It's not good. And then because of over exploitation of the groundwater, the land, the soil, the soil layer is compact and then sink, So there are many studies in the delta showing that this area, like in Camau, here the rate of sinking, land subsidence is around centimeter per year. You know, if we're talking about sea level rise in until 2070 is around like 40 millimeter, you know, but here we're talking about centimeter. Yeah, 4 millimeter per year until 2040. Yeah, but here we have 4 centimeter per year. That means it's like 10 times, you know, go down. The land is going down, the seawater going up. Yeah, so that means, you know, in the future, seawater intrusion will be higher, and then in the upstream here near the river, if we have different extreme wet year, flow from upstream will be higher and land is lower, and then the flood will also more than now. So let's see, somehow we see that they are kind of on interaction between different sort of water and different, you know, use of water, and also, you know, the use of water for the operation of the water management are all linked together, you see. And then if you do kind of wrong, you know, adaptation, then it leads to different issues that in the water that you need to again have to pay a lot of money and investment for fix the problem, you know. So I think this is a very good lesson learned for us and also for other countries when we rely a lot in construction, hydraulic construction. Of course, it's very important, but then how to manage, how to operate the water management system is very important. So now we have to change our way to dealing with this kind of problem. Also, future issues in terms of the climate change, you know. This graph shows you two scenarios of climate change, the high scenario and the medium one, on showing that this is the days of the year and this is the year. And then you see in the future, the concentration of the rain will be in a short period of year. That means the dry season is longer, the wet season is shorter, but the total amount of rain will be the same or even higher. That means you have in the wet season you have a lot of water concentrated in short time, and the dry season is longer. That means you have less water. You know, so this is a very critical you know, thing that we need to consider for our future adapt to change. And it's not only for the Mekong Delta, but also for the upstream country in Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. When you have less rain in the dry season, then you have to store, you have to, you know, you have in the rain where you have a lot of water and you store there, but then if it's too much, then you have to release in a short time, and then the whole big water amount released in a short time downstream, then the neighbor area have very big problem. I think you already experienced the problem when one reservoir break down, you see. And then in the dry season, when we store the water upstream, and then the neighbor downstream have no water, and especially in the delta, we have a very big problem of saline water go into the freshwater area, aquaculture. That sudden change is more damage than the normal change. We understand well, but in the new situation when everything uncertain in terms of the time periods, then we have big problem of water management. We do some simulation of combine different scenario of sea level rise and upstream discharge reduce. The first one is 11%, and the second one is almost 40% due to the building of the upstream agriculture and also water yield for reservoir and also for sea level rise. And then without consider land subsidence, you know, we didn't put into account the land subsidence. The salinity intrusion is very big area here. And if you cover this area to the rice and fruit garden, you may see that last area of the delta will be impacted. Yeah, so that means we have to prepare for this area to change. Or if we want to keep it, we have to build higher, dike, and that means we have to invest more money. We have to calculate the cost benefit for that. Or we change this dry area to something that yields less water or for using saline water, which is very costly also. Then you see that different scenario see more see a different chain of the saline intrusion. And in terms of flood, this is also still a saline intrusion. You may see that is changed very much. And the problem is the saline control system. Here in our model, we put already the saline control construction, but it's not effective in this situation. Yeah, so that really a very big problem for us if we only based on the construction. In terms of flood, also we use model to simulate the change, and the flood extends significantly downstream. And from low flood inundation to very deep inundation, especially from big city and some large area for rice and so on. So we can quantify the area, the situation. So this is really a good information for us to find the adaptation measure. However, there are a lot of uncertainty when we put into the model in terms of the scenarios. For example, when we get that kind of boundary condition of flowing from upstream, and the flow into the delta also change very differently according to the development of the operation of the hydropower dam upstream. You may experience this year when you have some operation of the dams in China, and you see drop a very big drop of the water flow, and we didn't put those problems into our model, and we cannot expect that thinking thoughts of that kind of situation. So that even giving us more challenging for manage this situation. Yeah, so I don't know if I talked too fast. I don't know if you have any questions so far. Please.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Trung, for this presentation.
I still have some part, but I just want to make sure if anyone to have a question.
I think this presentation brings a lot of questions, but you want to maybe you have to conclude.
To
the summary.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So so in summary, we have our water resources have when we manage our water resources, we have influence from two sides, from outside, like upstream, river water, seawater, climate change, and then this is from trans-boundary, and we cannot control this one, uncontrollable. Yeah. So this is, we have to deal with that. And what we can do is to sit down with other countries in the Mekong Basin, in the Mekong River Community, or the Mekong Langshan Corporation, to have a kind of better, regulate of the river flow, for all of us can get benefit from that. So I think we hope that. But so far it's very difficult. And in order in internal, of management, we also did a lot of measure, both construction and non-construction. But then there are negative impact from our solution, and bring a lot of impact in terms of water environment in the delta. So we need to it picture show you the context, and then we need to fix that one. So we have to change our strategy for water management to reduce the impact here. Yeah. So then there are two questions that maybe from me to you on, maybe you should think about that for the further discussion in this course or for the whole program. Thinking about the Delta, the Mekong Delta. So the first one is mainly to help you to recover, remind you about the water resources of the Mekong Delta. What are the main drivers of water resources change in the Mekong Delta? The second one is what the measures should be taken to ensure sustainable development of the Mekong Delta and different level, basin level, region level, and locally. So those the two questions, just kind of take home message that you may be thinking after this course, and we hope that some of us maybe have some further collaboration to understanding about the water resources in the region, and also thinking about solution for water management. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung, for that, for this speech. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this geography lesson, I will say. And,
let's make a really long and big clapping, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Chung, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, if you have any questions, please write down in the chat box. You can raise your hand if you know how to do it in Zoom.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Okay, now I'm gonna mute everybody, and everybody, please unmute.
Hi. Hello, I'm from. Can I ask a question now?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Yes.
please. First of all, I need to mute everybody first, and then you can unmute yourself after that. Okay.
so please introduce yourself too.
Okay, who just have the question, please unmute yourself and then ask the question. Thank you.
Okay, I have one question for Mr. Chung. At the regional level, we can see that there's a different way to talk about water management, and the micro, meso, and micro, meso, medium, and meso, and macro scale. But at the macro scale, I have one question about when you see the map of, there's so many hydro dam in the Mekong country, in the Mekong River. About water management, can we talk about some kind of collaboration, or we are more in some conflict and tension between the different actors and the different countries who manage that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the problem is, I think at the moment, the first one is where to build the hydropower factory, where is it a mainstream or the tertiary channels or river. The mainstream is have a higher impacts, and which is in the MRC agreement that those construction should be discussed and agree, and also doing a lot of impact assessment. However, I think it's a very difficult situation to manage that one, because I think the sharing of benefit from that, the company who operate the construction also aim at benefit from the electricity, selling of electricity. So I think then the problem is we cannot, even the government cannot, control that one, that situation. I hope that if other energy resource is available, for example, solar or wind energy, when it be more effective, then other countries, like in Vietnam, we invest a lot for solar energy and wind energy. I don't know Thailand or other country. Then the demand for energy from hydro energy will reduce, and then it's maybe stop the investment for that hydropower energy. That's my wish. I don't know, but for other thing is even we have the Mekong River Committee with the high level of the government sit down together, but for me I don't know how this work, and it's very difficult, I see. So the thing is we have to change the energy resource where we use more clean energy, then maybe that reduce the hydropower energy. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trung. We have a question from Chiang Mai University and from Mr. or Mrs. Asai.
Yes.
So please take the floor.
Yes,
You
thank you so much.
question.
I'm from Myanmar. So thank you for the presentations. And one thing, there are several questions but it seems that the water resource water crisis it's a lot happened from the big power countries like China. But in the Mekong region's countries that we are, suffering from the big power countries, like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, we are less powerful in the Mekong GMS regions. So how do the, we have GMS regions country that there is a plan for policymakers to engage with more ways to strategies to bargain with the Chinese government, because Chinese government usually do not share the water data before. It costs a lot of, cannot prepare for the lower sub-regions countries. So I think, how do we collaborate, the ASEAN sub-region and country, and that is there possibility to not just GMS country to pressure the Chinese government? How about all the ASEAN country? Because it's not just about the GMS countries, it's about the global climate change sources. So how do you think, and what is your suggestions and actions from the Vietnam government side too? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. Actually, it's a very big question. I think this for all of us, to think and try to think and then try the way. However, for us as the most downstream, area of the river, one time I think at the top in the government level, at the even ministry or prime minister level, they have a lot of dialogue and discussion, and that's out of my idea. However, there are a lot of trying. For us here in the Delta, as I mentioned during my presentation, that we have to change the way of using our resources to toward more increase the value of water use. If we use 1 cubic per meter of water for rice, we can get only like 1 kilogram of rice, then only like 5,000 millimeters. But if you use 1 cubic of water for different things, then you get higher value. It's the same for I think for Laos or for China. If they use that water for energy, and then if you use that water for something else, it's higher cost, higher value. In this value are not only about the money, but also about the environment. I think we have to prove, and then I think maybe there are some changing of perception in using of water. Overall, we will use water more efficiently, and then get higher economic values or environmental value. So that is what I'm thinking. Maybe others can help me to, think about this. You are very important and big questions. Thank you. Yeah.
Is this Dung Thanh Bé from Trung University? You have a question? Please unmute.
Yes, my name is Thuong. I'm from Myanmar, and I'm studying at Chiang Mai University. I have a question. My question is about Ajahn. You have mentioned in the wet season is high flood mostly happen. So I just observed that how the rice cultivations and the crops cultivations maintain during that time, because Ajahn, you have mentioned that in October to November, so that time is the wet season and it's high flood. So I would like to know how to maintain the not to destroy and the already taken the crops and rice, how to maintain and how to and how to make to find a strategy for the agri cultivation process here.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so the map I show, the flood in the Delta was the scenario where we have no control, no dike system, no sluice system. So that during the 1995, 96, we start to build a lot of dike system to protect the area from flooding. So, for example, from before, say, during the rise season, we still have water from the river, and then you have the first crops and second crop. In the second crop, at the end of second crop is around July, August. This is the harvest time for the second crop, but then flood coming, you know. Then we built that we close the sluice gate, and then we can harvest the second crop. And then when the flood water come higher, if we have a full dike, I mean that means with a very high dike, we can close, and then we have the third crops, you know. That's in the very extreme, you know, water management. And then, but recommend from the plan that we should have only 2 crops. And then the flood season, we should open the gate to get the flood water inside the rice field, to get sedimentation, to get fish resources. That's a very environmental friendly operation. However, farmer and local government want to have more rice, so they close that dike on year round. And later, I mentioned that we realized a lot of environmental problem. So then now we have to change back to reduce the rice crop per year. So that a situation in the Delta. We before we try to increase the rice crops, but now we hope we can reduce, you know, the rice crop and change it into something else like aquaculture, for example. So rice is not always good. I mean, economic benefit high compared to others. So yeah. Okay. I hope I can answer your question.
Okay, we have another question from Dương Bé Thạnh from Kiên Giang. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation, Mr. Trung. And I have a question for you. In Vietnam, in Vietnamese Mekong Delta, most people are considering about the shock intrusion in the surface, but they don't know much and don't care much about the shock intrusion in the route. And I see in your map that saline in groundwater is occurring in some area in Trà Vinh and Kiên Giang. So do you have any report or some analyze about the future in the future about saline intrusion in the groundwater? And the second thing, I would like you to confirm about the information. I read on the internet that there are some infrastructure in Cà Mau and Kiên Giang province were destroyed because of the land subsidence. And is this because of the over exploiting groundwater? And if you know we have to use groundwater for domestic use and for industry, so is there any solution by your opinion or currently used by the government to improve the aquifer or protect the groundwater for in the future? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you have 2 questions. One is about I understand where is the ground saline intrusion in the groundwater, right? And the second one is the land subsidence in the Cà Mau Peninsula. Is it because of over exploitation of groundwater, right? So in terms of the first question, there are some study about groundwater attraction and saline intrusion, or even even the pollution in groundwater in the delta, and I think it's a increasing problem in the groundwater. I think it's really we need to do further study, and also the local government need to have more measure to manage the groundwater extraction. However, it's really difficult because of the water shortage during the dry season in the especially in the coastal and the peninsula. The Kamau area, where we have very less surface water from the river, and also the surface water is polluted. So we need to find alternative water for the coastal provinces to deal with the surface water, freshwater shortage for drinking or for industrial, for water supply. So we have some study about the potential use of the rainwater, the storm water, because during the rainy season, the Kamau area have a higher rainfall. So if we can have enough storage, both from centralized lake, like big lake, or individual family storage, if we can increase, or the government can support that storage, then maybe we can reduce the pressure of water in freshwater shortage in the area. So then farmer will not take more groundwater. The other thing is to manage the use of groundwater for aquaculture, also using a lot of groundwater. So I think that those things need the management measure at the local provinces, local government. The second question is about the land subsidence in Kamau. That's both by the overexploitation of groundwater, but also the problem of building, the dike system. When we build a dike to prevent the saline water, the seawater intrusion, then the land is getting dry and soft, and then it weaken, and then it dry, and then if we have load from the transportation and heavy construction, then land will go down definitely. So I think that both because of the exploitation of groundwater, but also the problem of surface water management. Yeah. So I think that's it's a major problem. Yeah. Major regions. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have a last question from Karen Hazit from Cambodia. Would you like to speak out loud, Karifun Hazifit, or would you like us to read it for you? It's better if you can, ask the question. Please unmute.
Or maybe Mr. Trung, you can have a look on the text, on the question.
Yeah. I'm looking at the text.
Because I read it out loud for everybody, and Mr. Trung, please answer afterward. Is it clear that many of large hydropower projects in Greater Mekong region are flooding large areas of land? Many of the sites are in forested areas with rich biodiversity and sensitive ecosystems, which stand to be severely impacted by this type of development. Impacts on fish migrations and access to forest product threaten to harm the livelihoods of local people, as the inundation of agricultural and residential land. What is your main point of recommendation advocacy to decision makers for us in this regard?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, yeah, it's a very dry question for Dr. Ni. Later on, you will hear from him. Dr. Ni is leading the what we call the wetland conservation network. I think, yeah, you are right that not only the hydropower projects, but also the way we use the land. You know, our development, we call it development. That in terms of economic maybe, but in terms of natural environment is not developed. It kind of you know, harmful to the system. And as we all know understand about the benefit from ecosystem is very important. But so far we destroy ecosystem. And of course, you mentioned here about the hydropower projects, that's for sure. But even here in the Delta, as in my presentation, I show also the impact of our water management projects. Also, you see, we change the say destroy our ecosystem, very rich ecosystem, and now we have to fix that. So I think and luckily our government see now this is a problem. So that I mentioned about Vietnamese resolution 120 about the what they call the development, sustainable development of Delta under climate change strategy that try to use the what we call the natural based development more environmental friendly. So that's exactly what you suggest here. But for us, we try a lot in terms of doing you know, research, giving very solid evidence, and a lot of talking to the media, a lot of discussion with our friends working in the government. So a lot of workshop, attending of you know, government I say consultation, and it take I think 10 years, you know, more than 10 years, you know. I think it's very difficult anyway, but we should have more evidence, and also we have the local people together, local government together, and then the voice is not only from us but also from the local people and local government. I think we have to work very close to the local government, because they are not only the governor, but they are also their family, farmers, people living in the area. So they are in the same side with us. And then if we can provide them good evidence, good, you know, they understand, then they will turn our voice to convince the higher, you know, decision maker. So that's what I'm thinking. But I think later on, Dr. Ni will have a lot of good story to tell you in regard to this question. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trung, for this nice presentation. And without any transition, let's go to the next session with Mr. Ni, Duong Van Ni, who will talk about biodiversity versus climate change in the Mekong Delta. So if we can visualize.
He is here with me, so I think he will.
Okay. Okay, just
He will continue. Okay.
Mr. Chung, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, it's a good opportunity for me to say hello to my colleague, Mr. Nguyen. Just see on the screen. Hello, Nguyen. I cannot hear you, but it's nice to see you anyway.
Nguyen, please unmute.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mr. Mi.
Okay. While setting the technology here,
Sure.
you know that I am not familiar with this new technology, so that's why Dr. Ngang has to help me to go.
It's nice. It's nice from him.
Cái slide lên chưa Diệp Anh?
We are.
Yes.
Yeah. We can visualize. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Good.
We are on long times. So I think some of you may hungry. You are welcome to eat something, but it's better. It's better to shut down the camera. Otherwise, other people will feel hungry as you too. In my topic, I would like to share with you something related to climate change, biodiversity, especially in the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. Talking about climate change, we should distinguish the climate variability. For example, air temperature is changing from the morning 20 Celsius degrees, in afternoon 30 Celsius degrees. Within the red part, we call that the climate variability. Climate change sometimes likely the extreme value, either it's very low or it's very high. For example, in the graph you can see. And talking about the biodiversity, actually biodiversity should recognize in three levels. The first one is genetic diversity. The second one is species diversity. And the third one is ecosystem diversity. We usually easily recognizing about the ecosystem diversity. In some way, we can recognize about species diversity by eye, but very difficult to recognize the genetic diversity. But genetic diversity is make individual in species. They have different character. In this one, I would like to mention about the adaptability character of each individual within a species is totally different. Talking about the Mekong Delta, everyone knows that the Mekong Delta is the last part of the Mekong River. And here, I would like to mention the Mekong River, the biodiversity, especially fish, is number 2nd of the world after Amazon River. The reason for that is the water, the volume or the hydrological variability of the river is extremely big. For example, during the dry seasons, the volume of the water in the Mekong River is about 1,250 cubic meter per second. But during the wet season, it may give up to 67,000 cubic meter per second. And talking the Mekong Delta, we should distinguish the two parts. One part is in Cambodia, it's about 10,000 square kilometer, and another part in Vietnam, about 40,000 square kilometer. Okay, looking for the threat to the biodiversity in Vietnam, we can prioritize the factor. The first one is habitat change. Either habitat changes by forest to agriculture, or habitat change, maybe they change continuing flowing river system become the reservoir system by hydropower people just talking about. The second factor is pollution. Pollution either by the wastewater from the city, dump it directly to the Mekong River. In the right picture, you can see that the fish killed during the year before last year by dumping the wastewater to the sea. The third one is the overexploitations that many people need the income and they try to get as more as possible about the natural resources. For example, fish here. The fourth one is invasive species or disease. Here I mentioned some common species spreading in the whole Mekong regions. The first one that mimosa, the second that apple snails, the third that the shucking mouth fish, and the water hyacinth, for example. And the last one is, of course, climate change. Climate change is extreme value. For example, the air temperature, either low or high, that will affect on that four factor at different level. For example, at high temperature level, many origin fish species will disappear, and it will be dominated by the new species that can adapt to the high temperature in water, for example. About adaptability in the Mekong Delta, I wanted to share with you very briefly about the land use change. For example, here in the coast, we reduce shrimp farming and replant the mangrove forest. To do that, it's easily to talk, but it's very difficult in implementation. The challenge is the direct income of the local people. How do we set up a good direct income to the local people, especially the poor? Otherwise, the poor will cut the tree and will harvest everything in the coast. So that's why you would not replant the mangrove as well. The second one in the area, in the habitat with permanent source area. As you can see that many people now intend to convert from natural ecosystem with many species like seagrasses. They convert it into the intensive agriculture, for example, shrimp farming, for example. So then it's better to integrate the shrimp farming with different species. For example, in the right picture, you can see that we integrated with a kind of seagrasses, and that can improve the water quality, improve the biodiversity of the whole system. In the area with salt and freshwater interface, many people refer to call that the brackish water area. So instead of using the mono shrimp farming, traditionally in the right picture, you can see that the people they use the current channel that intake the source water during the dry seasons, and they raising shrimp. And during the wet season, they receive fresh water from rain or other in the river, and they can cultivate rice. So in the system, you can see that they can grow rice and shrimp model within the same area. Or in some area with the drought-prone area, it happens quite often. So in this area, many years ago, the people converted into the body dry land and forget the low or swampy area that can hold water for the whole area. So now we try to convert it into what called fish shrimp model. Actually, in this model, we can raise fish and shrimp in the trenches or the channel surrounding the farm, and raise rice in the middle. So in a year with the low range or less fresh water, the people can use the water in the trenches to irrigate the rice, for example. Or in the area with typical acid sulfate soil, this area contain a lot of aluminum, iron sulfate, for example. So that's why if do intensive rice farming, the drainage water contain a lot of acidity, and it's easily polluted the water system in the area and killing all the fish. So it's better to integrate Melaleuca and rice. Melaleuca is the wooden trees and can resist it very well in the acidity conditions. And Melaleuca tree have ability to reduce acid in the water by releasing many kind of chemical or something like natural chemical can neutralize acidity and improve the water quality later. Or in some deep flooded area, instead of making dye and doing farming like in the lab photo, we try to introduce some kind like the what call that netting aquaculture model. The first photo on the right, the people use bamboo. They make a fence, and they can raise in the catfish. Or the lower picture in the right, they use the net, to protect the shrimp. So this model allows the water flowing through all the systems, avoids the loss of sediments, and improve the quality of soil and water in the whole model. So that is very quick, just brief to you that how we start to conserve the biodiversity. It's better to start from the point of the local people, what they can do to restore the ecosystem. When we do that, that becomes a good scientific evidence, and in terms of practice, that also show very good economic returns, and that is a good example to ask the local government changing the policy. The first one, that the land use policy. If we do not have the simple model, and that the farmer or the people could not practice in hands, then it's very difficult to convince the decision maker at the people talk to change their policy. That's everything I can share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this session, Dr. Ni. We will come back to the question and comments from the audience. Maybe one question from my side to you in terms of adaptabilities in link with the loss of biodiversity. How is impact the inequalities in the Mekong Delta, because not every household can adapt but regarding the dynamic and the loss of biodiversity in the region.
Oh yeah. Talking about the whole Mekong Delta, the people easily misunderstanding that the flat area homogeneous in terms of environment conditions, but actually it's not. The Mekong Delta can be divided into many small ecosystems. That small ecosystem functioning differently from side by side, from season to seasons. So that's why the first one, we should deeply understand the functioning of each ecosystem. And then based on that, we can adapt different type of scientific methodologies to improve the economy return to the local people, but at the same time to conserve the environment and conserve the biodiversity. When we succeed into each specific ecosystem like that, then we're thinking about the combination of those habitats together to look for bigger scale. And if we can succeed to do that, and then we can look for the whole Mekong River system at once. So we can start from the whole Mekong ecosystem, but if we don't understand deeply the function and the activity of the local people, and our methodology may be difficult for the local people to adapt.
Thank you. Okay, there is any question from the public? Zepang already sent a chat. If you have any comment or question in link with this session. Yeah. Okay. We have somebody from Kenzong, I think.
Yeah. Hello, Dr. Hello, everyone. Thanks for your presentation. I would like to ask you about the sustainability of the model, the rice rim model, because there are some arguments on the sustainability of that model. Some people believe that if we continue to rice rim and grow rice, the salt molecule will accumulate year by year in the route, and maybe we can grow rice in the future, because at present the farmer they grow rice just about 3 months or around 3 months, and they raise shrimp about 6 to 9 months. So some people think that the amount of salt molecule will accumulate a lot in the route, and maybe in the future this area become the salt area, and they cannot grow rice in the future. I hope you can help me explain about that model.
Okay, talking about the rice streams, we should distinguish rice plus shrimp or rice after shrimp. That is differently. Rice plus shrimp, it means that you can grow rice and shrimp at the same time in certain area. But rice after shrimp, it means that rice during the wet seasons and shrimp during the dry seasons. So we know that rice need fresh water. Shrimp need the water with the salt concentration is about 4 grams per liter or more. So that's why do the combination of two species, rice and shrimp, together in the same length, we should understand how that length function. For example, we should know that how fast the soil can release the salt out of the system. Yeah. So by that, many people misunderstanding, especially the farmer, and in some case, even the technicians, also misunderstanding. They just think everywhere, if they have the source water, they can do shrimp. If they have fresh water, they can do rice. That's not correct. We should understand the system work first. In the Mekong Delta, in the eastern side, the area receives about 2,000 millimeter rainwater every year. But in the western side, the area receives only a half of rainwater a year. So it means that what happened here? It means that in the eastern side of the Mekong Delta, the people can use the rainwater to drain off the salt contained in the soil. Then they can plant rice. But in the western side, with the less rainwater, the people could not using the rainwater to drain off the extra salt in the soil surface. So that's why if the people continue to maintain the salt water in the farm, the salt will penetrate to the soil, different soil layer, and then less water, less fresh water from rainwater, you could not leach out all of the salt, extra salt in the soil. So it means that after you apply this model, few years, the salt accumulated in the soil and the environment becomes salty environment, then you could not plant rice anymore because rice could not tolerate it at the area with the salt contained more than 4 grams per liter. But at the same system, but in the eastern side, yeah, the rainfall enough water to leach out all of the salt in the soil that accumulated during the dry season. So that's why the farmer can plant the rice during the wet season. So it means, again, we should understanding carefully, understanding how the ecosystem works for every specific ecosystem. Yeah, we could not randomize and using homogenize everywhere. If you see that is source water, or if you see that is rainwater, then you can apply rice and stream system. No. You should understand how the soil, the water, how the ecosystem working first. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from Tâm Nguyễn from Vietnam Maritime University. I read it out loud, otherwise you can read it in the chat box, Dr. Ni. Okay, he said that thanks for the interesting presentation. How to solve the conflict between economic interest and biodiversity conservation in mangroves. I know that in these areas, people's income depends a lot on natural fishery resources, and most of them are low-income people. That's the question.
Okay. First, we should understand that people is a kind of species in terms of biodiversity. Yeah. So the people migrate to the mangrove forest. It's not for game. It's for life. Yeah. What are they looking for? They're looking for food. They're looking for income. Okay. So it means that the area before the people migrate to the mangrove area, that could not keep them, or that could not provide them enough food and enough income. That push them migrate to the mangrove area. Mangrove area without facility like water, domestic water, without electricity, without roads for transportation, they are not come to that area for enjoy. They come to that area for their survival. So it means that before we protect the mangrove, we have to thinking about the poverty and alleviation. Yeah. So that's why the problem of mangrove restorations, not only in Vietnam but everywhere in the world, related on the economic situation of that society. Yeah. If that society still at very low income and the people have to depend on the natural resources for their survival, and mangrove forest still very high threat. The first one that I mentioned here, before you thinking to grow the tree, you have to thinking to keep the people one of the species in that habitat, survival in that condition first. So if the people have the good income, they will keep the mangrove better. If the people still very hungry and very low income, all the tree you planted, the people will cut later very quickly. And that happens everywhere. So that's why poverty and alleviation should be applied first in that area before thinking to mangrove restoration. And that should go parallelly. If we want to keep the mangrove, first we have to keep the people living in the good condition. I found the question, do you have any recommendation to reduce the pollution in the Mekong River? It's a very good question. If we look the pollutant in the Mekong River, I remember about 8 years ago, we sampling about 500 wetlands cover from Myanmar to Thailand to Laos to Cambodia and Vietnam. And we analyze all the chemical remaining in those wetlands, because we hypothesis that all the chemicals, especially the persistent pollutants, always remained in the low part of the ecosystem. And wetland is the most low part in the ecosystem. That's why we sampling the soil and we collect all of the sample, including the plant species. Then we analyze it all of the pollutant, persistent pollutants in that sample, and we recognize that the most polluted the Mekong River ecosystem came from agricultural land. Yeah. Many people consider the pollutant may come from the urban area or on the industrial area, for example, but that we detected some sample closer to the big city or the wetland in the urban area. We detected that persistent pollutants, but in common, most of the pollutant came from agricultural land, and especially in the pesticide, insecticide, and herbicide. The challenges is every year, the big company, they release the new product, and those new product, if you analyze it with the simple technique, you could not detect it, that pollutants. But if you analyze it by special method, you may it's not sure, you may found some pollutant contained in their product. So what happened here? It means that some product already banned in that countries for many years, but we still found in the wetlands. And that is a big challenge. We need to raising voice to all the big company who release chemical to agricultural land. Is it okay? I would like to come back to the questions Stephen's raising to Dr. Trung, that how to advise decision maker about the big hydropower dam in the Mekong River. I would like to mention here who is decision maker. Decision maker is the local government. No, during the last 10 years ago, we found that decision maker is World Bank, because World Bank loaned the money to many companies, and they borrow that money, they build the hydropower dam. Yeah, and we bring all of the result all of the scientific evidence about the biodiversity, pollution, etc., to World Bank, and later, I don't know, but few years later, World Bank adopts that policy, and they don't loan money to hydropower dam on the Mekong River. But what happened now? Now we have many donors. And the new one that the AIB just formed a few years ago, another big company in Thailand, in Vietnam, many countries, the money comes from the central government, for example. So that's why decision maker here is different from country by country. And decision maker here different from every hydropower dam we need to investigate. But one thing we can hope, for example, EGAT in Thailand analyzes the electricity demand of Thailand increasing, but we can see that the electricity demand in Thailand now, it doesn't increase it. Electricity in Vietnam this year more or less surplus because we have more electricity than we need. So with that one, and with the new technology of the solar panel electricity, for example, or windmill electricity, for example, and 10 years ago, that very expensive investment, but now it's getting cheaper and cheaper. So that's why we can hope that in the future, there will not many big hydropower dam will build for electricity generations. But if they build the hydropower dam for another objective, for example, to store fresh water for transportation or doing irrigation for agriculture, that is another story we should talk. That's not only electricity. Yeah. The second one we would like to share with all of you that the hydropower dam, when they build, it doesn't change the total volume of water below the dam, but it changes the pathway of the hydrological condition, because they need to generate electricity, so that they need to release water anyway. So it means that the total water, it doesn't change, but the pathway, it means during the dry season, maybe you get more water than before. And during the wet season, maybe you get less water than before. Water can come earlier than before, or water can come later than before. That is the big impact on biodiversity. Because we know that every species, including people, we rely on environmental signal. And environmental signal mainly depend on the variation of the water level. For example, many species, for example, fish, when they got the signal from the river, they think, oh, that the wet season will come. Okay, they started to breeding, they starting to, you know, to multiply the population, for example. But then suddenly they stop, they don't release water anymore. And those species will die or will disappear after a few years. They generated the death. That many people didn't consider much. They consider too much or too less water only. No, no, no. The signal of water is very important. That make many species will disappear in the future by changing of the pathway. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ni, to share this knowledge in the Mekong Delta. Maybe we will close the session, if you don't mind. It's lunchtime now.
There's another question, Stefan.
There's another question. I didn't see it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. From who?
Maybe would you like to ask the question yourself? Please unmute.
I didn't see it on the chat, is why. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. You sent it to me in private.
Yeah.
Would you like to ask the question yourself? We'd like to hear from you. Ukchen Basna. Please unmute.
Okay, thank you very much for allowing me to have the last question. Yes, as we see the world now facing the global problems like climate change and pollutions and natural resource depletions. It means that we overuse of our natural resource. And regarding Dr. Ni topic today is about climate change that have a negative impact to the biodiversity. So my question is that do you have like any recommendation being the regional levels? It means that the regional level, how should they do, or the country level or citizen level, how should they do in order to minimize the increase of the climate change? This is my question, yes.
Thank you very much. If I remember in the year 2000, we have an international workshop in Bangkok. And during the night, sit down around table, we raised the same question as you raised now. And the people asked that it's likely who can now prime minister about biodiversity. Yeah, but it's likely the prime minister of those countries in the Mekong basins understanding about diversity differently. So that's very simple. But later on, with all the discussion, we come up with the idea that it's better to connect all the university in the area together. Because we hope after 20 years, maybe some of our students become prime minister. And they will have the same knowledge about biodiversity. It's just joking. But actually, the year 2002, we start with what we call that university network in the Mekong area. We start with 8 universities from Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And now the network covers 24 universities, including university in China, Myanmar, and especially university in Malaysia 1 to join 2. So during the last 18 years, we organized 15 what we call that international wetland training. We bring all of the young scientists who working in the wetland related area together, and we identify some wetlands, and we come there working with the local people, trying to understand how the ecosystem work, try to understand the local knowledge, and try to predicting what happened if we continue to keep the system like that for the next 10 years. And we changing. This year we organize in Vietnam, next year we organize in Cambodia, next year in Thailand, and we rotated in the whole Mekong area during the last 18 years. Actually, with the people like us, I wonder to say that we have only knowledge, yeah, and the best way is to share our knowledge together. Sometimes we thinking or we believe that we understand very well the ecosystem and the condition where we live in, but actually, if we move up to another area, we will recognizing that some technology we believe that is good, but actually it's not good to another area. Because diversity impact, it doesn't mean within 100 kilometers or within 200 kilometers. No, it happens all around the world. So that's why the best way, I believe, that continue to share what we understand about our local conditions and sit down together. This workshop is a kind of that, and we sit down together, we share our understanding, and every people, when we understood about the situations, we can adapt it into our condition and using it to improve the livelihood, the environment, and the policy of the country where we live in. Thank you.
Thanks so much for this last word. We will close, I think, the session now, right, Ziepang? I do not miss any chat. Mr. Ni, Mr. Trung, again, thanks a lot for your speech this morning. For everybody, for all participants, have a nice and a good lunch. And we will meet at 2:30 this afternoon for the last session of the first 2 days. Thanks, everybody. And enjoy your lunch.
Thank you.
Have a nice lunchtime. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Nguyen.
Ajahn, do you have anything to say? According to the schedule, we will break for lunch now and reconvene at 3 o'clock, according to the schedule. But I heard from Stefan that he would like us to be back at
2:30.
2:30.
Yes.
So maybe I would like to invite you back at 2 o'clock, so that we can spend maybe 20 minutes introducing each other, because so far we have not get to know each other at all, right? But I think yesterday and today we have learned a lot from the situation in the Mekong Delta, and some perspective from people who have been working on biodiversity and water resource in the Mekong River downstream. They face another kind of problems, similar to us, but also different. I think the advantage we from the north, from Myanmar, from Thailand, we can learn from the experience of the people who are in the downstream area. That's very good, and also they provide to me it's a kind of a scientific perspective, right? Hydrology and biodiversity, which we do not pay that much attention here in our graduate program here. We are more in social science, right? But again, from what they have told us, we also can ask ourselves if social scientists would like to look at these problems, what would be our contribution? So we meet again at around 2:15. So have a good rest have good lunch and good rest. Where's the So please go down to the floor downstairs, in the room at downstairs way next to the room you pick up your lunch box yesterday. Lunch will be served there. Is a lunch box or lunch box? It's we have to observe social distancing.